Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review is another modern film. Unbelievable. This is 2015's Tangerine, written and directed by Sean Baker. This is another lovely second sight release. You can go over to Chris Mohan's channel. I'll leave a link because he's been extolling the virtues of these second sight releases of interesting little films, and this one is no exception. It has a really nice booklet. There's lots of lovely extras in this release. Now, I will fully admit, Sean Baker is a filmmaker I have only had one experience of, and that is the Florida Project, which I had to switch off after about 40 minutes because I just could not stand the characters at all. Even the appearance of Willem Dafoe didn't help me. Now, I will go back to it and try again, but I just found the characters in the Florida Project really annoying. And again, you can have annoying characters, but they have to be interesting enough to actually put up with their annoyance. Maybe I was in the wrong mood, but the characters in the Florida Project just wound me up and annoyed me. So let's talk about Tangerine. This is a film about two trans hustlers from LA. It's set on the border of Hollywood and West Hollywood, as these two trans women are trying to earn a living and survive on the streets. One of them, Cindy Rella, see what she did there? She's just come out of county jail where she's been for 28 days, and her friend Alexandra, who has dreams of being a singer, perhaps, happens to mention that her boyfriend slash pimp, Chester, has been messing with a white girl, Dinah, or maybe Desiree, or maybe Diane, or some such. So Cindy, who is perhaps a little volatile, pretty much goes on a rampage across LA to try and find Chester, to find out that he's been cheating on her. And we meet all the other hustlers that are out on the streets, and we get into many hijinks. Now, the film was actually shot on iPhones, but as Sean Baker talks about in the extras, there was a little kind of add-on gadget that they got that gave you anamorphic widescreen. So the film, you can kind of tell, is shot on digital, literally it's shot on cameras, phones, sorry, but it does have the 2:35:1 anamorphic ratio, which does make it look more cinematic. I mean, this is a film on a microbudget, but it does kind of fit in with the authenticity of the streets. Baker and his co-writer pretty much just went to this area in LA, started asking around, hearing stories from these women, and it's real trans women playing trans women, and Hollywood hasn't really done that in the past. So again, there's just an air of authenticity about it, which gives it its realism. Now, you could argue Cindy is a bit like the characters in Florida Project. She pretty much never stops talking throughout the whole thing. She is very highly strung, and I think if the film just focused on her, it would be a bit of a slog for me at least. But Alexandra balances the relationship between the two of them out. She is much more grounded. I mean, she still has her problems, as we see her in business transactions and other things like that. The scene where she does actually sing in a club is one of the more moving scenes in the film. And again, I didn't make it all the way to the end of Florida Project, but for me, Tangerine is much more of a heart than Florida Project did. And again, maybe it's about the authenticity. I mean, Kat Ellinger does a wonderful video essay on the release by Second Sight, where she talks about, that thin line between actually making a film showing characters who have perhaps fallen between the cracks, or characters that are struggling to make ends meet, and making poverty porn, essentially showing, oh, this is how poor people, or this is how disenfranchised people live, and oh, she'd wring her hands and say, oh, isn't it terrible how they live, but I don't actually care because I'm quite secure in my own life. But because the story is essentially a woman trying to find her man to find out whether he's been cheating on her or not, that's something universal. But it's also a really good film about friendship between the two women, and the obstacles, the truth that comes out about certain things and about each other, that perhaps would destroy people with a weaker bond of friendship than Alexandra and Cindy. Added to this, we have a character of an Armenian taxi driver who has a thing for trans women and uses their services when he's out in his taxi. He has a wife and kids and relatives, but he's the only breadwinner, and he, as I say, has a thing for Cindy and really all the girls, and he kind of looks after them and checks in with them, but also uses their service. I mean, the actual business of prostitution is not glamorized, it's not used for titillation by Sean Baker. It's not glamorized, as I said, but it's also not shown as these poor victims, and it's also these characters aren't showed as saints, or kind of, the noble poor, or the noble, fallen, or the noble forgotten about. They have flaws. A lot of perhaps more mainstream films tend to show the poor or the disenfranchised or marginalised groups. They all kind of show them as being virtuous and wonderful and perfect, and if only they got a chance, the world would be a better place. This film doesn't do that. This film shows that these people have their flaws just like everybody else. These people have their hopes and dreams like everybody else, but for most of us, those hopes and dreams don't work out. So it's not an idealised view of the disenfranchised or, the lower classes. It's certainly not poverty porn, despite being rough around the edges, the film and the characters. I think the reason for me that it works is because you do care about this couple of women, despite sometimes they do things that are perhaps not agreeable. If you're a fan of The Wire season 2, you might recognise the guy who's playing Chester, the pimp slash boyfriend of Cinderella. It's just a wonderful little film. Yes, it is rough around the edges. Yes, one of the characters is perhaps a little bit more annoying than the other one. But again, it's all the little things and the other characters that make this one, for me, a little bit more interesting and a little bit more engaging than what I found the first 40 minutes of the Florida Project to be. But again, at some point I'll go back to that film. Probably won't be anytime soon, but at some point I'll go back to it. But Tangerine, probably not for everybody, but then that's what cinema is about. The special features are loaded. There's a commentary. There's a making of. There's interviews with the actors, the director, the writer, the producer. As I said, there's a wonderful video essay by Kat Ellinger, as we would expect that to be fantastic anyway. It's just loaded with extras. You probably can't actually read them in the back because it's white on kind of orange, or tangerine. So it's another interesting little release by Second Sight, getting some nice treatment. Again, if you stick with it, and if you're patient with it, I think its kind of best aspects and its more endearing elements do come out. You perhaps have to get through some difficult moments along the way, just as these two women do. So thanks very much for watching this random review of another modern film, even though it's now 8 years old, but that's about as modern as I get. So let me know if you've seen Tangerine and what you think of it, and hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Soldier Ronan from Soldier Ronan Films, saying farewell.